Hey, y'all, and welcome. We are grooving over here about the board, this mothership on today.
All right.
These are some true funketeers that are podcasting on today from the Sudds-R-Us podcast. We welcome you once again. Today is still in celebration of Black History Month, and we're going to add 365 to that because it's not just consumed or contained in February.
Right.
We know we're in March, but we're still celebrating. So we are still honoring and acknowledging the African American artists that have been very influential in our lives, in the lives of African Americans. And then we're still focusing in on funk. This is the second part of a two-part on funk. And we're focusing in on two artists that's going to expand into other artists. Just hold on, you're going to find out.
Right.
But before we do, we definitely want to thank God for this opportunity. Y'all, we had quite a night last night here in Georgia. This storm was something else. It was almost like a tornado, but nevertheless, we thank God for keeping us, from all hurt, harm, and danger, because there's some stuff that was flying around off our porch last night. But we want to give a special shout out as well to our son, Ben Sudderth III, who allowed us to be on this platform, BS3 Network, where we share this platform with over 30 other podcasters.
Right.
And if you haven't done so already, we ask that you please join us on all social media platforms as well as on Roku TV. That's right, Roku TV. And if you have not downloaded BS3 Network, it's on your screen. We invite you to do that. We have topics around sports, of course. That's probably the number one. If you're not a sports fan, we have music, we have family topics, we have life, spirituality, we have church, yes, marriage, politics. We even have a show about man talk, just for men. Okay, we have comedy. We have society culture, education, movie and TV reviews, and relationships.
That's right.
So, there's something for everyone on Roku TV. And if you're interested in getting into the podcast arena, you're encouraged to reach out to BS3 Network. He offers coaching, not just for BS3 Network. That's correct. He's not that selfish. But if you're interested in getting some hands-on educational tips and tricks about getting into this podcasting arena, he is available. That is also on your screen. And last but not least, if you would like to reach out to us, we would love to hear from you. Sudds-R-Us has a Gmail account. It's on your screen. Give us your comments, your suggestions, anything that you'd like to share with us. We are open and available. We want to see if we have any guests before we get started. Thank you. As always, Mama Joe is tuned in. Thank you, Mama Joe. She's on the mothership.
That's right.
All right. We're ready to take off. And my husband's going to start off today with his artist. I'm not going to let the cat out of the bag today. Thank you.
All right. All right. So we're going to do a new episode. Actually, it's a part 4 as we continue with our Black History moments. And the African American influence on the music industry.
Right.
Part 4. Well, I guess it's part 4A.
That's right.
Part 4A, which is P-Funk.
Right.
Better known as Funkadelic, which was an American funk rock band formed in Plainville, New Jersey in 1968. It was active all the way up to 1982. Now they took the James Brown created funk style to a whole new level.
Another level. That's
right.
They
took it up another notch. From the styles of funk we discussed on last episode, which was boogie funk. It's a hybrid of electronic music and funk. We talked about funk metal, which is a mix of funk and metal. We talked about G-funk, which is a mix of gangster rap and funk. We talked about timba, a form of funky Cuban dance music, and funk jam, a Washington go-go funk. Well, Funkadelic probably falls into the genre or the category of Avid funk, which is a music style in which artists combine funk rhythms with an avid grade or art rock mentality. And most prominent eras occurred in the late 1970s among post-punk acts who embraced Black dance styles. Now, critic Simon Reynolds, now I mentioned he's a critic. This is what Simon Reynolds, he described Avid funk as difficult dance music and a kind of psychedelia in which oblivion was to be obtained not through rising above the body, rather through immersing in the physical self-loss through animalism. I like to call it like this. I like to call it a sound that's magnified through your mind, body, and soul, especially if you're under the influence of drugs and alcohol. One of Funkadelic's hits was Free Your Mind, and your A will follow.
That's right. That's
now,
right.
musicologist Simon Frett describes Avid funk as an application of progressive rock mentality to rhythm rather than melody and harmony. Some motifs of the style in the 1970s and 1980s included neurotic slap bass and gruntural pseudo-sinister vocals. And that's what Bootsy Collins mastered, that slap bass, I tell you, as well as the Eurodisco rhythms synthesizers used to generate not Princeton hygienic textures, but vulgarity and profanity. In other words, let me put it like this. The sound vibrates from the slangs of the street and caused a jerk reaction in your head and in your feet.
In your feet, that's right.
The band Funkadelic and its sister act Parliament, both led by George Clinton, pioneered the funk music culture of the 1970s. Initially formed as a backing band for Clinton's vocal group, the Parliaments, Funkadelic eventually pursued a heavier, more psychedelic rock-oriented sound that released acclaimed albums such as Maggot Brain in 1971 and One Nation of a Groove in 1978, which goes to something like this. One nation under the groove, getting down just for the funk of it. One nation and we're on the move, nothing can stop us now. I tell you, the group was formed by George Clinton in 1964 as an unnamed backing section for this doo-wop group, the Parliaments, while on tour. Now, listen to this. The Parliaments was formed in the back room of a barbershop in 1956.
There's some stuff going on in that barbershop.
And named after the cigarette brand Parliament. Now, after some early personnel changes, their lineup solidified with George Clinton, Ray Davis, Fuzzy Hackins, Calvin Simmons, and Grady Thomas. Clinton was the group leader and manager, and he was part owner of the barbershop. Where the group conveyed to entertain customers. And check this out. It was called the Slick Palace. The Silk Palace. I'm sorry. The Silk Palace.
They had, look at this comment.
I'll tell you.
Look at this comment. Camellia says, Maggot Brain. Jeez. I don't know who Facebook user is. You're saying, yo, thank you for tuning in. But look on the post and click on the StreamYard link so we can identify you and welcome you personally.
You said what?
Personnel changes. Some people got fired.
You're right. So the Silk Palace was the name of the barbershop. And we saw a picture of these brothers.
Oh my gosh.
The Parliament.
That process.
And they had processed hairstyles whipped up
like that
to the front. I'm telling you. The Silk Palaces was doing those processes, boy. It was some hair burning in that particular barbershop. Not your typical clip, clip, clip barbershop.
Okay.
Now, eventually, Clinton gained employment at Motown Records as a songwriter and producer, making weekly trips to Detroit to produce The Pets, Roy Handy, and other acts. Now, that's where the relationship with the Spinners and one of their lead singers, Felipe Wayne, that's where it all took place. That's where it started. In 1967, the Parliaments released I Want to Testify. I'm telling you. And Relevant, which is their record company, and finally achieved a hit single with the song reaching number 3 R&B and number 20 pop on the Billboard charts. In reality, George Clinton was the only member of the Parliaments to appear in the song because the other members were unable to travel to Detroit for the recording session.
Didn't have no money.
So that's right. So session singers and musicians rounded out the recording. To capitalize the single's success, Clinton put together a backing band for the tour, expanding the Parliaments to 5 singers plus 5 backing musicians.
Wow.
Now, the band originally consisted of musicians Frankie Bose, Richard Bose, Langston Booth, plus 5 members of the Parliament on vocals. But Bose and Bose, the 2 brothers, and Booth enlisted in the Army in 1966. And Clinton recruited bassist Billy Bass Nelson and guitarist Eddie Hassel in 1967. And then he added guitarist Tall Ross and drummer Tiki Fullwood. But the name Funkadelic was coined by Nelson after the band relocated in Detroit. By 1968, Clinton became embroiled in a contractual dispute surrounding the bankruptcy of Revelot Records and temporarily lost the rights to the name The Parliaments. Now, because of the dispute with Revelite, the record company that owned the Parliament name, the ensemble began playing under the name Funkadelic. So here's another example, my brothers and sisters, I tell you, of how artists who signs over their rights of their own creation to the white business establishment because of financial compensations. But when Revelot declared bankruptcy, the Parliaments were sold to Atlantic Records. And Clinton abandoned the doo-wop to avoid working for Atlantic. Here is the resemblance of 2 musical geniuses and their business savvy in managing 2 or more groups simultaneously, like James Brown did. We talked about that last episode. James Brown, he had the James Brown Band, James Brown Orchestra, he had the JBs, and also the Famous Flames. George Clinton did the same thing. He had the Parliaments, he had Funkadelic, the Brides of Dr. Funkenstein, and the Parlettes. And then eventually he went on his solo. And he also had with the solo George Clinton and the P-Funk All-Stars. But as Funkadelic, the group signed to Westbound in 1968. It was around this time that the group's music evolved from soul and doo-wop into avid funk, which is a harder, guitar-driven mix of psychedelic rock, soul, and funk. Much influenced by the popular musical and political movements of the time, which were Jimi Hendrix, Sly Stone, we talked about also last week, the MC5, and Vanilla Fudge were major inspirations. But this style later evolved into a tighter guitar and horn-based funk. And it was circulated mainly in 1971 to 1975, with subsequently during the height of Parliament and Funkadelic, their success was around 1976 and 1981. And they added elements of R&B and electronic music with fewer psychedelic rock elements. The band made their first live television performance on Say Brothers on October the 7th, 1969.
Wow.
They played a jam with songs Into My Own Thing and What Is Soul and I Want to Testify. And I Was Made to Love Her, which was a Stevie Wonder cover. And Friday Night, which is August 14th, and also Music for My Mother. The group's self-titled debut album, Funkadelic, was released in 1970. The credit listed organist Mickey Atkins plus Clinton, Fullwood, Hazel, Nelson, and Ross. The recording also included the rest of Parliament's singers, still uncredited because of the contractual agreement.
Wow.
Several uncredited session musicians then employed by Motown, as well as Ray Monette of Rare Earth and future P-Funk mainstay Bernie Worrell. Now, Bernie Worrell was officially credited starting with Funkadelic's second album, Free Your Mind and Your A Will Follow, in 1970. Thus beginning a long working relationship between Worrell and Clinton. The album Maggot Brain followed in 1971. But the first three Funkadelic albums displayed strong psychedelic influences, not least in terms of production and limited commercial potential, despite constant and containing many songs that stayed in the band's set list for several years. It would influence many future funk, rock, and hip-hop artists. After the release of Maggot Brain, Funkadelic lined up and expanded greatly. Tall Ross was unavailable for experiencing either a bad LSD trip or a speed overdose, while Billy Bass Nelson and Eddie Hazel quit due to financial concern. From this point, many more musicians and singers will be added during Funkadelic's era and Parliament's era in their history, including now the recruitment of several members of James Brown backing band, the JBs, in 1972, most notably Bootsy Collins and the Horny Horns. Bootsy and his brother Catfish Collins were recruited by Clinton to replace the departed Nelson and Hazel. Now, we're going to talk about this a little bit later, but Bootsy, in particular, became a major contribution to P-Funk sound. This is interesting because Bootsy left James Brown's band because of LSD use, and band members walked out of James Brown because of financial complaints. So George Clinton and James Brown were shrewd businessmen.
Come in here,
I mean, shrewd. Sometimes they may be using unfair payroll taxes or payroll tactics, but they were shrewd and they ran a tight ship.
That's good.
In 1972, the new lineup released the political charged double album, America Eats Its Young. The lineup stabilized a bit with the album Cosmic Slop in 1973, featuring major contributions from recently added singer and guitarist Gary Snyder. After first leaving the band, Eddie Hazel spent a year in jail after assaulting an online stewardess and air marshal while under the influence of PCP. Then he returned to make major contributions to the album Standing on the Verge of Getting On back in 1974. But Hazel only contributed to P-Funk sporadically thereafter.
Wow. I just wanted to bring out Camellia. Thank you for joining. Trey, thank you for joining. Good afternoon. But a good point. I kept thinking about that, Camellia. She says, En Vogue remade that Free Your Mind and the rest will follow.
That's
they
right.
cleaned it up.
That's
Yep,
right.
you're right.
That's right. That's right.
And here we go again. They was not paying people. I don't understand. But you're absolutely right.
You're right. But the interesting thing, though, while preparing this podcast, this scripture came to mind.
Here we go.
It says, be not deceived.
The word.
God is not mocked. Whatsoever a man soweth,
that's it.
That shall he also reap. For he that soweth to the flesh shall of the flesh reap corruption. But he that soweth to the spirit, shall of the spirit reap everlasting life. And it says, and let us not be weary in well doing, for in due season We shall reap if we faint not.
We faint not.
So what did George Clinton do? George Clinton revived Parliament in 1974 and signed them with Casablanca Records. Parliament and Funkadelic featured mostly the same stable personnel, but operated congruently under two names. At first, Parliament was designed as a more mainstream funk ensemble, and then also had different horn arrangements and soulful vocals. With Funkadelic was designed as more of an experimental freestyle guitar-based funk band. The ensemble usually toured with combined name Parliament Funkadelic or simply P-Funk, which also became the catch-all term for George Clinton's rapidly growing stable of funk artists. In 1975, Funkadelic released his most successful album, Let's Take It to the Stage.
Yes.
Which nearly cracked R&B Top 10 and Billboard 100. Later in 1975, Michael Hampton, a teen guitar prodigy, replaced Hazel as a premier lead guitarist in Parliament Funkadelic and was a major contribution to the next several Funkadelic albums. Funkadelic left Westbound in 1976 and moved to Warner Brothers. The first album of Warner Brothers was Hardcore Jollies, released in 1976. Just before leaving Westbound, look at what George Clinton did. He provided that label with a collection of recently recorded outtakes, which Westbound released as an album Tales of Kid Funkadelic. Now, the album didn't significantly better commercially than Hardcore Jollies and included Undisco Kid on R&B Top 30 single. In 1977, Westbound capitalized further by releasing an analogy of the best of the early years. As Parliament began achieving significant mainstream success in 1975 and 1978 period, Funkadelic recorded and released his most successful album, influential album ever, and it was One Nation Under a Groove. In 1978, adding former Ohio Players keyboardist Walter Junie Marson and reflecting a more melodic dance-based sound. The title track spent 6 weeks at #1 on R&B charts around the time that Parliament was enjoying the #1 R&B single, Flashlight, Aqua Boogie, and Uncle Jam Wants You. But in 1979, they continued with Funkadelic's new, more electronic sound production. The album contains the 15-minute, Not Just Knee Deep, featuring former Spinner lead singer Felipe Wayne, an edited version of the top R&B charts. And the final official Funkadelic album, The Electric Spanking of War Babies, was released in 1981.
I remember
the release was originally a double album project, but it was reduced to a single disc under pressure from Warner Brothers. Some of the deleted tracks would appear on future P-Funk release, most notably 1982 hit Atomic Dog, which appeared on the first George Clinton solo album, which is the Omega Psi-Phi Fraternity, the Q-Dogs theme song.
Their anthem, huh?
I tell you, it goes something like this.
Why
must I feel like that? Why must I chase the cat? The dog in me, nothing but the dog in me. Why must I feel like that? Why must I chase the cat? It's the dog in me, nothing but the dog in me. Do the dog catcher, dog catcher, do the dog catcher, do the dog catcher, dog catcher,
all right.
Do the dog catcher. Bow wow wow yippee yo yippee yay, bow wow yippee yo yippee yay. I'm telling you, that's one of the songs that we love to dance to. But meanwhile, the album Connection and Disconnection, reissued on CD as Who's a Funkadelic. This is where you come with the disgruntled employees and disgruntled band members. They released their album under Funkadelic in 1981. The album was recorded by former Funkadelic members and original Parliament Fuzzy Haskins, Calvin Simmons, and Grady Thomas, who had left P-Funk in 1977 after disagreements with George Clinton management practices. I told you, man, a tight ship.
Here we go.
I'm telling you, this LP, notable for its heavy use of Thomas Pay Dog McEnvoy's jazz horn, contains a track called You'll Like It Too, which came as a very popular breakbeat source of the hip-hop community in the 80s. Former band members, drummer Jerome Bailey, released the album Mutiny on the Mama Ship by his new band Mutiny. Right. Mutiny. You get it? Mutiny on the Mama Ship by his new band. Right. Instead of the Mothership, by his new band Mutiny.
Before you go further, though, here's a question. I don't know. Chameleon says, would they be considered R&B or rock?
They considered funk.
Funk. I was gonna say, I don't think either one of them. And it says, go ahead.
No, Avid Funk, as it's described. Avid Funk. Avid Funk is a combination of R&B, rock, which actually is a part of funk. So it's more a psychedelic type of music. And it's also more of a rhythmic music instead of melody and chords. It's more rhythmic. And it's easily, I guess, described as being a music that gives you the ability to use your artists and your gifts in improvising and not being just straightforward and set on a certain rigid track. Right. So rigid.
And you're right, Camellia. They did influence rap music too. Snoop Dogg is a very good friend of George Clinton. And you can imagine in so many ways, not just music. You can imagine why with the weed smoking. But they both look pretty good. So weed don't seem like weed too bad.
Weed too bad. That's it. It's for medicinal purposes.
Medicinal purposes. At least they still here. They're still here.
So in the early 1980s, with legal difficulties arising from multiple names used by multiple groups, as well as shakeup at the Parliament record label, George Clinton dissolved Parliament and Funkadelic as recording and touring entities. However, many of the musicians in later versions of the two groups remained employed by Clinton. So that he had a revolving door. Yeah, you may go out disgruntled, but he let you come on back in.
But you got to be better.
That's right.
You can't come in there half-stepping.
That's right. So Clinton continued releasing new albums regularly, sometimes under the old name, and sometimes under the name George Clinton and the P-Funk All-Stars. But in the mid-1980s, Funkadelic studio album, By the Way of the Drum, was recorded by Clinton and P-Funk. His legacy. Clinton continued his P-Funk collection in 1990 in the 2000s. With a revolving stable of musicians, some of whom remain from a classic lineup of Funkadelic and Parliament. The rock-oriented sound of Funkadelic has diminished as Clinton has moved towards more of an R&B or hip-hop sound. 1997, the group was inducted in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Filmmaker Yvonne Smith of New York City-based Brazen Hussey Production produced Parliament Funkadelic, One Nation Under Groove, which is a full-length documentary about the groundbreaking group, which aired on PBS in 2005. After 2008, Clinton was at work on a new Funkadelic album for his new record label. In November 2008, West Brown Records released Toys, collection of Funkadelic outtakes and demos for the Free Your Mind and American Eats Is Young album. Another thing I want to mention, as you said, as my daughter said, the song is a collaboration of Nas, of Sly Stones, and it tells the story of Jesus Christ. The B-side to the song, Nuclear Dog, which is the guitar solo by P-Funk guitarist Dwayne Blackbird McKnight. So before I turn it over, let me just give you this scripture. This scripture came to mind when I was looking at this particular part. As we go on to our next artist, it comes from 2 Corinthians 10:14. For we stretch, as the song, we're stretching out. For we stretch not ourselves beyond our measures, as though we reach not unto you. But we are come as far as you also in preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ. Funkadelic had a major influence on a large number of hip-hop artists and genre hip-hop as a whole. In particular, Dr. Dre referenced Funkadelic's sound as a major influence in his music, especially the G-Funk sound. Funkadelic 1979 release, Not Just Knee Deep, in particular, was sampled extremely by G-Funk artists, including Replacement on Dr. Dre, The Chronic, Snoop Dogg's Doggy Style, as Camilla mentioned,
That's right.
MC Hammer, Street Fighter, De La Soul, Me, Myself, and I, and Tupac, All Eyes on Me. George Clinton and the P-Funk All-Stars still touring today, along as being named Parliament Funkadelic.
Yes. Yeah, you know, we are Funketeers. Y'all still on this mothership?
Keep riding.
Trey said, getting down just for the funk of it. That's right.
That's it.
That's amazing, Trey. You remember that stuff. And yes, Cam, sampled just as much as James Brown. Exactly. Right. These are legends. They are legends. We're not talking about them because, you know, we was in the basement partying and getting high and listening to them. You know, this weekend we've been listening to this music. It's like, oh, that's what they said. Like I could remember the lyrics. Oh, we were just jamming to the beat.
To the beat. That's it. That's
on that mothership.
Yeah, jerking and feet stomping. I'm telling you.
But our next featured artist on this mothership was born, that's right, was born October 26, 1951 in Cincinnati, Ohio. He's a musician, a singer, and a soul writer, songwriter.
Yes.
He's gifted to play the bass, the rhythm guitar, the drums, and the keyboard.
That's right.
And the keyboard. I'm talking about none other than Mr. William Earl Bootsy Collins.
All right.
Listen to that name. Never knew what his name was. All I knew was Bootsy Collins.
All right.
But Bootsy at the age of 19, and his older brother, his full name is Phelps Catfish Collins.
All right.
Frankie Cash Waddy, everybody had a nickname, and Felipe Wayne. They formed a funk group called the Pacemakers. And that was in 1968.
Right.
I mean, they started the whole game. Look, we were just not even 10 years old, and these dudes out here making big music. So the Pacemakers were hired as James Brown backup band.
Right.
And they were often referred to as the original JBs, to distinguish them from the other JBs that ended up walking off because, again, James didn't want to pay these guys. You know, it was a pay dispute. So again, we don't know what happened. James was no joke, and they probably came in there shucking and jiving. But anyway, they didn't get paid.
Right.
So although the Pacemakers worked for James Brown for only 11 months, you know, the original JBs played on some of Brown's most funkiest recordings ever. Get Up. That's the one our grandson would get that guitar and he'd just be playing.
I'm telling you.
You know, and then Super Bad.
Yeah.
Soul Power.
Yeah.
Talking Loud and Saying Nothing. If y'all ain't never heard none of these songs, y'all need to go back and listen to James. Now, if you don't really understand the lyrics, that's kind of typical because James is like, you know, I'm gonna know it ain't. You know, it's like, what are you saying? But anyway, the two instrumental samples that is much sampled as well is called The Grunt. I had to go back and listen to that. And these are the JBs. Now they're instrumental, so artists were just sampling that stuff. So Bootsy would say, you know, about his tenure working with James, that he was like a father to him. And I want to read his quote. It was really touching. He said, he treated me like a son, and being out of a fatherless home, he really played up to that. And he said, good Lord, every night after we played a show, he called us back to give us a lecture about how bad and horrible we sound. He said, that ain't on it. That ain't on it. I didn't hear the one. And he would tell them at every show. So one night, Bootsy said, we knew we didn't sound good, you know. So James said, y'all was on it. So Bootsy looked at his son, at his brother, and said, man, this mother must be crazy. Like, we didn't sound worth nothing, but he understood. James was using that reverse psychology.
Right.
It's like, so he made them, play even harder to measure up to the style and the sound that James wanted to hear.
Right.
So, he said he absorbed it and he understood and he accepted it in a positive way. So after leaving James Brown, he returned back to home, back to Ohio.
Right.
And he was suggested to play with the Spinners. Now, if y'all ever heard the Spinners, like, Bootsy is a fucketeer. He is not, that was not a fit. And I know he knew that.
Right.
So following the advice of one of his friends, a female friend that's also a future Parliament singer and original member of the Parlettes, she introduced Bootsy to George Clinton in 1972. And of course, it took off after then. So he rose to prominence with James Brown in the early 70s and later with Parliament Funkadelic.
Right.
So Collins, he has this bass line and they call it humorous. If you listen to some of his lyrics, they are kind of humorous, but you got to know his mind was a little altered.
Right.
So, his vocals established, some of the most, phenomenal lyrics and innovators in the funk is what he was.
Right.
So he played bass on most of the Funkadelic and the Parliament albums through the early 1980s.
Right.
Receiving several songwriting credits as well. So in 76, you didn't see Bootsy without Catfish. They came as a package, right?
Right.
So Bootsy, Catfish, Waddy, Joel Johnson, Gary, they called him Mudbone, Cooper, and then Robert, they call him Peanut. I told you, these nicknames, Johnson. And the Horny Horns, they formed Bootsy's Rubber Band, which was a separate touring unit. Look at George, straight businessman. George P. Funk Collective. So the group recorded 5 albums together, the first 3 of which are considered to be among the quintessential P-Funk recordings. So the group's 1978 album, Bootsy's Player of the Year, reached the top of the R&B album chart and elevated #1 on the R&B single Bootzilla. Yeah. Y'all got to look up some of these albums.
I'm telling you.
So, he used to sing this song. I'm gonna ask you to sing I'm a Boogie Woogie Baby. Go ahead.
I'm a Boogie Woogie Baby. All you got to do is wind me up.
That's it. Like that. Look, I'm a Boogie Woogie Baby. If you want to see me boogie, forgot that line. All you got to do is wind me up.
Right,
I mean, what? But that, look, we were partying to that stuff. But like Clinton, Collins took on several alter egos.
Listen to this.
Okay, before I go any further. So Camellia says, I didn't know Bootsy Collins was from Cincinnati.
Right.
Y'all related, and that's our cousin, Carlton Robert Collins. Oh my gosh. I did not make that connection. Good point. So I know Carlton isn't on here. That's right. And that's Bootsy when he come out to the concert. Bootsy. We did that for about 10 minutes. Bootsy. So he became Casper. Oh, I'm sorry. They created their own genre, Black is Genius. Camille, I was telling Daddy the same thing. I wanted to wear that T-shirt today. We're trying to be in that era on today.
Right.
But yeah, Black is Genius. And the white folks just couldn't duplicate it. So what else did they do? Criticize it. But anyway, they had alter egos. They were just so, I guess they were elevated, in their mind by whatever they were smoking. And Bootsy was Casper, the funky ghost, not the friendly, the funky ghost. To Bootzilla, the world's only rock star. Wait a minute. Let me back up. Rhinestone rock star monster of a doll, baby Baba. Or baby, yeah, baby Baba. That's what he said. I don't know how he got all of that out in that song, but he later formed his own P-Funk side project known as Bootsy's Rubber Band.
Right.
His signature was his bass slapping style. Now I know we already mentioned that, but he adopted his trademark space bass. I never knew that. I kept wondering, what is this star? Everything he had was represented with a star. So his bass guitars were all custom made. Bootsy was very savvy with his money. Okay, custom made guitars. And was unfortunately, it's really sad it happens, but one was stolen. the original one, the original space base. And thank God, one of the Cincinnati pawn owners of a pawn shop, returned it back to Bootsy.
Wow.
They just got the money and left it at the pawn shop. So everything about him reflected this star. If you ever go back and look at any pictures of him, he has this top hat with a star, his guitar, his outfit, his backdrop.
Right.
And his outfit in itself was just something to see. I mean, Black folk, we know how to dress, okay? But he still stands out as a phenomenal dresser. So some of his famous songs, before I go further, Trey said, what were they smoking? They were smoking some good weed. What do you call it? So Daddy always call it ganja. Some good stuff. Okay.
Yeah.
They were. But Stretching Out and Bootsy's Rubber Band was one of his hits. And I love this one. What's the telephone bill? Y'all hear that? Mudbone can sing that high soprano. I'm not even gonna touch it. But Munchies for Your Love is one of them slow songs, one of them making love songs, if you will. And Can't Stay Away.
Yeah.
And just check out their repertoire. I'm telling you, we've been listening and funking all weekend long.
I'm telling you.
So Collins released also 2 albums. His first solo album, Ultra Wave. I don't know if you guys ever heard of that. And Sweat Band.
Okay.
I think that one's out there in the garage, Trey. We're going to have to pull that one out and hear the popping and the cracking, the snap, crackle, and the pop.
That's it.
But that was on George Clinton's Uncle Jam label, George Straight Business, with a group billed as Bootsy Sweat Band. Right. Now, he was also credited, Bootsy was producing the debut of P-Funk spinoff, Zap.
Zap, right. Wow.
So after nearly 5-year hiatus, he said, I'm hanging up my hat for a minute. He had a comeback in 1988. What's Bootsy doing? He come back with a question. Well, you want to know? And then he flaunted a new sound that foreshadowed the 1990s, such as the dance floor smash, Party on Plastic.
Party on Plastic, that's it.
That song is bad. It's a party on plastic.
It's super elastic.
That's right. Okay, we got Andre Jones with me. All right. That ooh-wee. That's right.
That's it.
We ain't gonna go with the yabba dabba. There you go. You understand. So Bootsy had done a lot of collaborations. I just love this history of him. I never knew until you go back, you kind of get all that fuzz out of your head first. And you go back and you really reflect on, what you were listening to and trying to decipher some of these lyrics. It was amazing. But he collabed with, Ohio Players and Herbie, the Dr. Herbie Hancock, the group called Delight. I don't know if the kids would understand that. And so many other artists that I've never, ever heard of, But Bootsy's new rubber band formed in 1994, releasing Blasters of the Universe. I don't even know if I've ever heard of that. And also put forth in a live release, Keeping the Funk Alive for 1995. And that was recorded over in Tokyo.
Okay.
So in October 2005, Collins co-wrote a song celebrating the resurgence of his hometown team, the Cincinnati Bengals, of the National Football League, called Fear the Tiger. Never knew that. And this featured raps written by some of the players of the Bengals.
Right.
So he also sings, listen to this, Martial Law, the theme song of Cincinnati Marshals indoor football team.
Okay.
Bootsy bad. And he debuted the song in 2006.
I'm telling you.
In the same year, listen to this. Now he released a holiday album. I'm like, come on, Bootsy. That's really stretching. Christmas is forever. I listened to that. I'm like, nah, I can't do the Christmas. Nah. But this represents the first Christmas theme album made by a member of the P-Funk musical collective. See, that's the whole thing.
There you go.
Trendsetters. They're different. They just wanted to set the trend. But one of them, I think it came out with Bootsy playing that bass. I was like, you started the Christmas song with the...
That's the funk, baby. That's right.
He bad. Let's see what Classmates said. Robert Davis. That take me back to high school.
That's right.
Bootsy and the Parliament Funkadelic. That's right.
That's
Those were the days.
I'm telling you.
So in 2008 and 2010, Collins opened Bootsy. It's a restaurant / club in Cincinnati. And this venue featured live music, a museum dedicated to all of Bootsy's, musical career. That's phenomenal. And Spanish, Central, and South American cuisine.
Wow.
That's kind of interesting. They had no soul food up in there, and they had no fried chicken. But anyway, in 2007, Collins, along with his brother, Catfish, Clyde Stubblefield, and a few others, Bernie Worrell, you talked about him, participated in the recording of the soundtrack for the movie Superbad. Now, I got to go back and even reflect on that. In December of that same year, they went without Worrell and performed the first tribute concert remembering James Brown. Now, I know that was phenomenal. Now, Collins also portrayed a radio DJ in 2013 in the video game Grand Theft Auto 5. Now, whoever on here that's listening played those video games, in which this featured several of his own songs. I mean, I'm not into the video games, but that's another, another show in his hat.
That's it.
In January 2019, Collins announced on Facebook that he would be retiring from live performances due to health reasons. And again, I'm going to quote, because he writes, so heartwarming. He says, "Time has come for me to tell all our Funketeers that I will not be playing bass in concerts anymore. I have decided to become a coach for up-and-coming musicians." I love that. I know you are disappointed. Just think for a moment how I feel. Doc said too much pressure on my inner right ear and my right hand. Bootsy is known to have given the stage name to artists like Babyface. Did y'all know that? And Silk Sonic.
Silk Sonic, that's it.
Wow, which is a collaboration between Bruno Mars and Anderson .Paak. I am impressed. In July 2010, Collins, in partnership with a former child actor, Corey Danziger, launched Funk University. It's called Funk U. Wow. I'm glad I said that right. Online only. It's an online only bass guitar school. I mean, that's phenomenal. He's giving back.
Yes, he is.
That music is ingrained in him. And so he serves as the curator and the lead professor. Well, he better be the lead professor. So in March 2011, Collins and his wife visited Franklin L. Williams. It's the Little Kids Rock program, and donated a bass. And gave the children a bass lesson and rapped with them while they played the blues. He is now an honorary board member of the organization. And he is also an honorary member of Phi Beta Sigma fraternity. So y'all, yesterday I tuned in to Bootsy on YouTube. Go and check it out. With the Cleveland Youth Orchestra.
That's right.
With the youth choir singing. And this is what they were singing. You got the pull. You got to pull my string.
Rock down, down, baby.
You got the pull. You got to pull my string.
I'm telling you.
Wind me up. He got that from James Brown. There you go. All that. 14 karat funk. Where y'all think Bruno Mars got that from? He didn't say funk, but he said 14 karat. You got to listen to some of these lyrics. These artists know who to grab it from. So another one of our favorite songs is "I'd Rather Be With You." Now, this is one of those slow ones that Mudbone and Peanut sang together. They had these duos on these songs that were just phenomenal. So we're going to try. We had a month of this singing. We got to rest our vocals, okay? I'd rather be with you. Ooh, yeah. Yeah, I'd rather be with you. I'd rather be with you. Ooh, yeah. Yeah, I'd rather be with you. I'm telling you, if y'all hear the rest of it, I'd rather be with you. I can't sing the rest. You got to go listen for yourself. But that's how it goes. I'm telling you, funky.
I'm telling you.
So he is a member. His legacy is just phenomenal. There's so much more. I mean, I can't even tell you. But his legacy continues on. He's a member of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, inducted in 1997 with 15 other members of Parliament Funkadelic. I didn't know they had that many. That was a revolving door, though. In 2020, Rolling Stone magazine ranked Collins number 4. They know they lying. In its list of the 50 greatest bass players of all time. I don't know who's number 1. I'm gonna have to go research that.
Right.
But you know, I don't know if you had anything else to say. Maybe. Okay, there you go. Larry Graham. Well, as long as it's the brothers in there, because I don't know.
Stanley Clarke. Gotta get Stanley Clarke.
There you go. Okay. You know, those are the elders. They better have some color on them now. Come on now. But you know, both George and Clinton, you know, they both are George and Clinton.
Bootsy.
Both George Clinton and Bootsy Collins. They offered us, you know, as young people back in the day, that mind-altering music. You know, I guess you had to have a little buzz to get into it. Otherwise, you can't. There's no way. And we, you know, we probably derived after, you know, smoking, like I said, after smoking a joint. That's probably how they got to that music. Okay, maybe not one, you know, but, you know, I believe the lyrics just had profound impact on us, you know, now that we can understand them. But even then, you know, it was the beat.
It was the beat, right.
But for us in the 70s, you know, still in high school, still dealing with racism in the South, you know, still trying to find ourselves, you know, and it just freed our minds and the mess that was going on in the society and the oppression. I'm telling you, even then, you know, sit at the back of the bus and we had to walk to school, you know, before we could get on the bus. You know, jump in the train to get across the track to get to the school. So anyway, it was so much going on, but it just gave us that funky groove, and you know, the party, like I said, in the 70s and 80s when we were in the basement, you know, in the smoke-filled basement of, you know, the red light district, you know, with the strobe lights, and you know, you feel like you moving in slow motion like that. But you know, I just believe these artists, all of them, you know, that we've talked about, were blessed. With a special gift and the talent that only could have come from God. You know, it may not have been gospel, but most of them started out that way.
That's right.
You know, and I just want to conclude, if you don't have anything else to say, conclude with the scripture. Did you want to add anything else? So, and it comes from James 1:17. Whatever is good and perfect is a gift coming down to us from God our Father, who created all the lights in the heavens. He never changes or casts a shifting shadow. You know, he kept his hand on them, even though all of us, not just them, all of us, we were out there doing our thing, but we're still here only by the grace of God. So we thank you.
Thank you
so much for tuning in and riding with us on this mothership. We appreciate your support on the Sudds-R-Us podcast.
Thank you so much. Please share, and thank you for your comments. And also your likes, and please continue to enjoy your weekend, and may God continue to bless you and keep you all. Thank you again for tuning in. God bless you.
Thank you.